How do you find the people you want to hire you or buy from you? What do you say to them when you do? And what do you do when they don't respond? Well, you're about to find out. Welcome to the Clients from Content podcast. My guest today is Seetha the Comic. Seetha is a high energy corporate entertainer who brings laughter and amazement to corporate events, private parties, and community celebrations. Known for his clean, culturally inclusive humor and interactive shows, Seetha blends stand up comedy, magic, and hilarious audience games into one unforgettable experience. You can follow him at Seetha the Comic on all social platforms. He's also a client of mine who I've been working with for a little bit, and I am excited to record our conversation today. So, hey, Seetha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
I am really excited to have you on because not only I know we've been talking about this stuff, and today we're going to really dive deep into cold outreach and basically trying to. I know I've been working with you and we're going after getting you more corporate gigs and getting in touch with corporate event planners and all that kind of stuff. And we were having this conversation. And I was like, you know what? I'm about to give you a bunch of feedback. This would make a good podcast episode. We should hit record on that. So, we're going to cover all that today. While you're interested in obviously the comedy world, the advice and everything I'm going to share will be relevant to anyone that's trying to do outreach for any kind of business leads or clients or anything like that. So let's get into it. What is the first thing you want to know?
Josh, I published a newsletter called Corporate Event Insider, which is mostly crafted for corporate event planners who want fresh ideas, insider tips, and some entertainment options. So my first question is, I know my audience at a broader level, but how do I zero in and find people to reach out to? How do I do that research?
Yeah, it's step one of all this, right? Everyone's like, oh, do cold outreach. And it's like, yeah, that sounds great. And then you sit down
Right.
to do your cold outreach and you're like, yeah, who am I reaching out to?
Reaching out to.
People. So let's talk about that. And before I get into some of that, I want to just preface this because I think it's really important to say up front for this episode, especially on this topic. Cold outreach is hard. Capital H-A, all caps H-A-R-D. It is hard. Even if you do everything right, you might fail. And even if you succeed, the majority of swings are going to be misses, right? So I think it's really important for anyone that's going to do any kind of outreach like this to, I think a lot of times you see people talk about this stuff and they're like, oh, just send cold emails and do this, that, and the other. And they make it look like it's going to like magically work. And they leave out the point that like most of it's not going to work and it's really hard. But with that said, it can work. And another thing to remember is that you don't necessarily, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but you don't need that many quote unquote hits for this to be worth the time investment. So I just want to sort of frame that going into it. So as far as this part of the question of how do you find people to reach out to, I think the first thing you need to do is you need to get clear on what you want to happen and who you need to reach to make that happen. So in your case, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you tell me basically you want more corporate bookings, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I also want, that's the end point, but I also want to interview some of these corporate planners who subscribe and give them some ad time. And, it's again, help me to help me out, help you kind of a situation.
I love that you said that about the interviews because it leads right into the sort of the next tip I was going to have for you, which is I think another thing that too often people overlook when they're doing this outreach, which is once you say, okay, I need to get to these people. So again, in your case, corporate event planners, that kind of thing. How well do you actually know what your target audience wants and values? And I think in most cases, even people that feel like, oh yeah, I kind of know, I don't think they know as much or as well as they think they do. And I don't fault you or them for that. The reality is that's not what you do in your day-to-day job, whatever it is, you're not going to know. So I think one of the first things that you want to do is you want to try to figure out how can you get as clear a sense as possible of what these people that you're going to reach out to, what they want and value. And there's a variety of different ways to do that, right? So obviously if you can get in touch with them and you can talk to them, that's a home run. That's the best way to learn what they want. But even if you can't do that, can you talk to people who work with them? Can you study them? Can you read or listen to interviews with them? Can you find podcasts that they've been on and interviewed in? Do they have social posts that they're posting about stuff? So you want to really broaden out from, okay, maybe I can't get these people that I want to reply to me, or I can't get them to sort of talk to me, which would be the ideal. but maybe I can talk to people that have worked with them. Maybe I can study their profiles. Maybe I can find a podcast that a person with this job title has been on. Maybe there's someone, depending on what the profession is, maybe there's a teacher somewhere who has a class. How do they get these jobs? Maybe I
Right.
can find someone who's interned at one of these places and say, can
Right.
I buy you lunch and just tell me what's going on there day to day? My background is working in the entertainment industry in Hollywood. And the sort of, I was going to say the dirty secret of Hollywood, but there's probably a lot of dirty secrets of Hollywood. But one of the dirty secrets of Hollywood is the assistants know everything. And today's assistant and intern is tomorrow's head of a studio. So people
Right.
that work in the entertainment industry, early on, you start to realize, oh, a relationship with even a low level intern assistant could be beneficial for me now, but it also could be beneficial for me a couple of years from now. One of your main goals should be to know as much about your target clients and what they want as anyone else in the world. And if you do that, you will succeed. So thinking about and figuring out what is everything I can do to get to the point where, in your case, you know as much as anyone in the world about the corporate event booking space. You know what those people do. You know what's hard about their job. You know what they look for. You know all that stuff. If that were to happen, easier said than done, obviously. But if you got even close to that, you can imagine how much easier outreach, how much easier everything else would become because you would really
Oh,
have
absolutely. Yeah.
that depth of
Yep.
knowledge, right? So
Yep.
setting the learning and the knowledge as one of your goals beyond just how do I get people to respond to my emails, like those things sort of work hand in hand. But I think a lot of times people are like, oh, they're just spraying emails out there and they're not bothering to try to actually learn that sort of side of the business. The other thing here is broadening your scope to include everyone who can help you get to the people you want to get to. So, like I was saying before, that can mean interns, that can mean assistants, that could mean other comedians who have been booked by these other event planners. Maybe there's a manager at a hotel that does, or a conference center that does a lot of corporate events. They're not going to hire you, but they know a lot of corporate event planners.
Yeah.
And you go, hey, can you make introductions or can you just tell me about what do they tell you? What are their problems? What are their like? So when you really start to broaden out and go, it's almost like the 6 degrees of separation thing, right? You start to go like, all right, well, somewhere in here, I can get to people that know these people and either get information about them or get an introduction to them or anything of that thing. But that's sort of broadening your scope. Then the next thing I was going to say is getting really specific.
Okay.
So it's one thing to say, and we've started to talk about this a little bit before this call. It's one thing to say, I need to reach out to corporate event planners, but you should be able to come up with a list of 100 specific people to target and aim to have 100 conversations or connections. And they may not all be, in your case, like the end goal of, oh, it's an event planner or corporate comedy booker. Some of them might be the person that runs the
Right.
convention center who's always got people booking conventions, right? Any of those people, again, in that broad scope, but specific names, specific titles, even if you don't have contact information for them yet, to go, all right, I got a list of 100 targets here that are either my ideal thing or they probably have a relationship or connection to my ideal thing. The more specific you get, the better. Another way to sort of think about this as you're building this list, and again, the sort of broaden the scope idea, is you can almost think about it like concentric circles. And so I
Okay.
think the first circle, like if you think about like a dartboard or whatever, the inner circle, which is, it's funny because like I don't even think I've said this to you yet, but we so overlook it when we think about outreach. That inner circle is like, who do you know? So you might not know, you probably already know some corporate bookers or people that,
Right.
you've had gigs and done that kind of stuff. So like they should be on the list for like we talked about your newsletter. My guess
Yes.
is, I don't know if you've even told them about it yet, right?
Yes.
So the people that you know, people
Mhm.
that you know that might know them. I know you're a comic, you know a million other comics who have probably done corporate gigs, who probably know this agent or this manager or this whatever. So that's that sort of inner circle. Who do I already know that I can do outreach to that's cold, but not really cold because I have some sort of relationship with them? They know who I am.
Got it. Yes.
That's the inner circle. Then the sort of circle beyond that is who do they know?
Right.
So on LinkedIn, you can see connections. Again, this
Yep.
person I know knows that booker, knows this venue, knows this whatever. So then you start to go, all right, well, who are those people that they could potentially connect me to and introduce me to? And then you go beyond that where you start to get into, okay, who do those people know? And now you start to get, as you go out, you start to get a little colder, which is fine. And you're still going to go after those people. But I think a lot of times what people do is they jump right to that outer layer of cold and they forget the sort of low hanging fruit of, wait a second, You probably have. If you sat down, I'm sure you could come up with 20 people that it'd be worth having a conversation with that have some connection to
Absolutely.
somebody easily. So again, adding that to your sort of to-do list. Another thing here is in terms of finding people and thinking about this, you want to remember that at the end of the day, you're focusing on relationships over mass numbers. So this gets back to what I was saying before, where most of this you're going to swing and miss and you're not going to hear from the person and nothing's going to happen. But reminding yourself that you don't actually need that much to happen. One good relationship can change everything. One
Okay.
person can lead you to more people. Again, I have no idea anything can happen, right? Or not. But like you might somehow get to take a guy who works at the convention center out to lunch. And I know everybody that comes in here booking conventions and you're amazing. And I can introduce you. And that you struck out with 99 pieces of outreach. And that one guy just got you a year's worth of business.
Yeah. Could happen.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So keeping that in mind, right? That it's like you don't need that many to work and you're always sort of, one away. And one thing I'm going to mention here quickly from my own sort of comedy background, I have a blog post that I'll share. We'll put it in the show notes. I'm not going to tell the whole story here, but just a sort of quick example of this. I used to produce stand-up comedy shows.
Yeah.
And the way I got started in that literally was I cold called the Hollywood Improv and said, hey, I have an idea for a show. Had no idea how it worked. I didn't flat out ask this, but assumed I was going to be like, I wonder what it costs to rent out the Improv. Happened to get on the phone with a booker, had no credibility, no anything, right? I had an idea for a show. He really liked it. We love it. We'll help you produce it. We'll help you book it. You don't have to pay the
Wow.
comics. First show I ever did, Sarah Silverman, Jim Norton, Jeffrey Ross, Doug
Wow.
Benson, and Tom Sora, who at the time was like, nobody was the MC or the host or whatever. I called. I literally called and was like, hey, I had no idea how this works. I love comedy. I have an idea. Again, you'll read the blog post and you'll see there's some other stuff that I had with, I didn't go into it with nothing. I had a sort of idea and I had a good pitch and it made sense and it was going to help them and all sorts of stuff. But it just goes to show you, like, you have no idea what's going to happen and how one call or one email can do a lot. So the next thing here I wanted to give you on this in terms of finding people was I wanted to give you a 6-step plan that you or anyone else can use to follow to find more of your ideal clients to reach out to.
Yeah.
So the first thing you can do is if you can find one potential ideal client actively uses social media. So they don't just have an account, but they're engaging, they're posting. They don't have to post every day, but they're using it. Step 2 is study their profile. And most importantly, see who they follow and who follows them.
Okay.
Because this network of connections all exists. You can find, for example, one corporate comedy booker or one corporate event planner, and you can go look at, oh, they're following this person. You will find if you go through those followers, you will find they're following probably other people in that space. So one person and just sort of mapping who they follow and who follows them can lead you down a rabbit hole to a bunch of other similar people, right? The third thing then is you can also study their posts and see what are they consuming? What are they sharing? What are they talking about? Chances are it's some industry stuff. So that might tip you off to, oh, they read this newsletter and they're in that world. So you can sort of quote unquote stalk them and learn a lot about what they're paying attention to and who they're engaging with. You can also step 4 by studying their profile. You can see, are they in any groups? Are they in Facebook groups? Are they in any organizations? It will tip you off to things that you may not know exist, but in their world, you can see, and each of those will again lead you to more people that are like them, which is step 5. Basically, you go down the rabbit hole and follow all those leads. What is this person? What is this group? What is this newsletter? What is that thing? What you're actually doing is kind of mapping a niche and mapping an industry of, oh, this is where all these people are gathering and paying attention to. And then step 6, which is really the beauty of this. So if you found one person to do this with, you will most likely find through all their connections and their whatever, one more person. And now go do it for that person. The next suggestion I was going to say, which is I know works for you because you are a client and a member of my Clients from Content program. So you get all my skill sessions. There's one in there called the Relationship Builder, which is an hour-long presentation on how to do a lot of this stuff. So I don't know if you've watched it yet or not, but if not, I highly recommend it. For anyone who's listening, I also recommend it. You will find it very helpful. And then the last thing on this question in terms of finding people is I'm going to give you something I haven't done on these episodes before, but I did it a little bit as an experiment before our call. And I was like, this is pretty good. So I'm going to give you an AI prompt you can use to help you find more ideal clients to reach out to.
Oh,
So
wow.
here's the basic prompt. You can use it on ChatGPT or wherever you want to use it. It's basically fill in the blank so anyone that's watching or listening to this can use it as well as you. So you're going to say, I'm a blank who wants to get blank. Where can I find people to help me get that? So you might say, I'm a stand-up magician entertainer who wants to get more corporate event gigs. Where can I find people to help me get that? I'm going to
Wow.
tell you that I did it and it gave some obvious suggestions, but very helpful. But
Okay.
now there's a part 2 to this prompt. So you're going to start with that. It's going to give you, oh, here's all these things that you can do to whatever. Then you can ask it questions about it. You can go back and forth. It's a jumping off point for a conversation. But then at some point, you want to give it this prompt. You want to say, I want to spend 2 hours a day working on this for the next 30 days. Please give me a day by day plan I can follow with specific actions to take during the 2 hours I work on it each day. It will give you a day 1, do these things. Day 2, do these things. Day 3, do these things. So you can literally follow the plan it has given you based on what you told it you're looking to accomplish. The other thing you can
Wow.
do is with each day's thing, as you do it, you can feed it to them for advice. So if one of the things
Right.
is, okay, day 1, we're going to clarify this section on your website that has your whatever about your corporate gigs or whatever. Well, you can do that and then give it to the AI and go, okay, I did step 1. Here it is. What do you think?
Oh,
Do
yeah.
X, Y, and Z. Right. And at day
Right.
2, they're like, all right, send your emails to these people, blah, 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 blah. And you go, okay, here's the email I'm going to send. What is this good? Any
Funny. Yeah.
changes? So not
Right.
only can it give you a plan for you to follow so that you're doing stuff every day, it can help you actually implement that thing. So highly
That's
recommend doing
powerful.
that.
Yeah.
So again, I thought you'd find that helpful, and anyone else who's listening, I think can as well, because it's super flexible. All right. Any questions about any of that before we move on? Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So,
All right.
Josh, one thing I wanted to touch base is you said about other comedians too. How do I use
Yep.
that conversation to help me get to the people? Can you quickly touch base on that? What am I asking them? And how does the conversation with the comedian who has performed at a corporate gig, how do I approach that conversation? Comedian, comedians.
Yeah, I know. They're not always looking to help each other. I totally get it. So I think there's 2 pieces here. So I think there's the introduction piece, which yeah, some of them might be a little, I'm not trying to give you my gigs. I get it.
Yeah.
But separate from the introduction piece, there's the knowledge, the education piece.
Okay.
So that can just be conversational as opposed to an ask. You can be like,
Right.
you start up a conversation with them about the corporate space and whatever, right? And you can now even be like, I'm writing this newsletter and I'm curious, what's your experience with them like? What do you love? What do you hate? What's the weirdest question you've been asked? Have you ever noticed
Right.
any? So as opposed to introduce me to this person, you're like, maybe there's some things I've picked up. And again, the closer you are with someone, the more, if you have a relationship
Yeah.
with them, they're going to be less wary and more likely to help you. The other thing is to try to think about how you can help them as well. So you could say, look, I'm doing this thing. I'm doing outreach to a lot of these people.
Yeah.
If you make an introduction, I'll be happy to introduce you to anyone I get connected with. Now, look, for some of them, they don't care. Like they're lone
Yeah.
wolf, like I don't want this person, whatever. But others of them will be open and receptive to it. But I would, in your own mind, separate I'm going to get knowledge from this person versus I'm
Right.
going to ask them for an introduction.
Got it.
Most
Yeah.
people will like to share, especially if it's, I'm curious what your experience has been with this. That's very different. They like to talk. What annoys
Right.
you the most about dealing with corporate bookers? They like to talk about that, whereas they may not go, hey, I'm not going to email an intro to you or whatever,
Got it.
which is fine. The other
Got
thing
it.
too is you're also just listening because
Yeah.
maybe they mention a name. So you might go, oh, they're not going to do the introduction. But, they're like, oh, yeah, I did this crazy gig that was blah, blah, blah. I couldn't believe it. And then you're like, oh, yeah, did so-and-so book that? No, it was this person. Oh, okay. Let me jot that down. So
Got it.
I think, yeah, it all sort of depends. But thinking about what you can do
Yeah.
to also make it worth their while and that kind of thing.
Perfect.
Cool. So
All right.
quick side note before we go to your next question. If you're listening or watching to this, I assume it's because you want to get more clients from your content. I can help you do that. My Clients from Content program teaches you how to get more clients and sales from your social posts, newsletter, podcast, blog posts, and videos. It's helped more than 500 members use content to earn millions of dollars in revenue. And you can get access to it now for as little as $99. So check it out at joshspector.com/program. All right, Seetha, let's get to your next question. What is the second thing you want to know?
And this is more embarrassing because I've done this part and it's not working out well. And we said we are going to talk about it in the podcast.
Yeah.
I did reach out to a bunch of the corporate event planners around my area, which is the South Florida area. But I'm also figuring out what should I say when I reach out, right? I've tried a couple of options. I've tried Chat GPT to help me hone, some of the content too. But the more I think of what I should put in the email, I'm getting more and more ideas, but then nobody wants to see a long email. How do I get a concise, crisp email, just enough information for these people to see?
So again, first of all, this is where I go back to this stuff's hard. Second of all, I would say don't beat yourself up because most people don't bother sending anything. So you're already ahead of the curve because you're trying. You'll figure it out. Essentially, the core of this question is like, all right, well, great. What do I send to people now that I have this? I've done these things. I found all these amazing people to reach out to and connect with, but like, how do I get them to pay attention and all of that? So I think one of the things is I want to phrase it another way, which is to think about not just what do I send, but how can you provide value to the people you want to reach?
Yeah.
And like I said before, you need to know what they value before you send them anything. That's why the more you know about the space, the easier it's going to be. It won't be easy, but it'll be easier. And there's
Right.
actually a great Seth Godin quote about this. He says, every interaction you have with a customer either strengthens your relationship because it's mutually beneficial or weakens it. Weaken it enough times and it breaks. Right. So
Yeah.
every one of these things is, and again, that's not to scare you away from sending emails. There's nothing like you're going to send emails and whatever. But I think the key part there is that like, how do I really make this beneficial? You know how it's going to benefit you having a relationship, or you hope, but how do you make clear how it's going to benefit from that? And I
Right.
think as far as what to send and what to do with outreach, it might be helpful to start with what not to send. There's things to avoid. And so let's start there. So here are 6 things to avoid when sending cold outreach emails. So the first is don't make the email about you. So even
Okay.
if it's about you, it's always about them. It's always about them. The second one is don't ask for a level 10 commitment in a level 1 email. So you didn't do this necessarily, but it's amazing how people will send emails asking to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, this person has no idea who you are. So maybe have an ask that matches that level of familiarity and trust with you. So I think that's a common mistake people fall into. And to be honest, and I'm not saying we're going to talk about your email in a second, but you send an email saying, hey, I have this newsletter. I think you're going to find it valuable. All that's great. And ask them to
Right.
subscribe. They still don't know you. They don't know the newsletter. Subscribe to my newsletter is not a level 10 ask, but I'm not sure it's a level 1 ask.
Okay.
Hey, would you like to see an issue? Can I send
Right.
you an issue versus give me your email address and subscribe and whatever. So just thinking in that mindset of what's the sort of smallest possible ask I can make to get this going. I'm amazed. I'll get emails from people that are like, hey, could we hop on a 30-minute call to pick your brain? I appreciate it, but that's a big act. They act like 30-minute call is like not anything. And I don't even know who you are. And you haven't even told me what you want to talk about. The third thing here to avoid when sending cold outreach emails, don't include competing calls to action. So it's
Okay.
tough enough to get people to do one thing. Ideally, there's one clear thing you want them to do, and that clear thing is simple.
Okay.
Fourth thing to avoid is don't sound corporate/professional. I know you're doing corporate events, so this
Right.
is weird, but I think a lot of times people default to, I want to seem bigger. I want to seem like a big company. You'll see this all the time where it's like, somebody who's a freelancer who works for themselves, and yet their email is like, we here at such and such incorporated, and to whom it may concern, you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to
Right.
do anything that sounds like it was auto-generated to blast to a million people. Which leads to number 5. The fifth thing to avoid is don't be boring. I think this is especially true for you who are professionally funny and an entertainer and whatever. So why would we send a email that sounds like it was from some corporate drone? For you in particular in your niche, can you make them laugh? Can you give them a sense of your personality? You wouldn't be boring if you met them one-to-one at some networking event, because
Right.
you want to turn on the charm and you want them to walk away and go, that guy's hilarious. I would
Right.
love to bring that guy. So your email should match that tone that you would want to
Wow.
bring across, right? It's representative of your brand. And then the 6th thing here to avoid when sending cold outreach emails is don't send an email that doesn't include value in the email. So
Okay.
this is a little counterintuitive, but like when you send an email saying, hey, I've got this great newsletter, you're going to find it really valuable, subscribe here. they only actually get the value if they subscribe.
Right.
Versus, hey, I write this newsletter that shares tips on corporate events, blah, blah, blah. Here's one of them if you want to check it out that I think you'll find really valuable. Or did you know that blah, 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 some amazing stats, some amazing tips, some amazing thing. If within the email they go, I don't know who this guy is, but that was really interesting. I wonder what else he has.
Wow.
Versus I'll
Yeah.
only find out what else he has after I give him my email
Subscribe.
address or talk to him or whatever. So those 6 things are things that you should avoid when sending cold outreach emails. So now I'm going to give some specific feedback on the emails that you were sending. Any
Oh my
questions
God.
about any of that before I dive into your
No, I'm just going through
bravely sharing?
I'm going through what all I missed I took very less time in analyzing what I should with the content and not
Yeah.
about how to present it. So yeah, please.
Your emails were not that bad. They
Okay.
were fine. There were just a couple things that it's okay, this might help you if you go this direction or these things. So I'm going to point out a couple things that I noticed. So the first one was the subject line. So the subject line right now was stay ahead of the game, subscribe to Corporate Event Insider. Okay. So first of all, to me, sounds promotional, maybe spam. It's not spammy, but it feels like this person trying to get newsletters, subscribe. It's borderline. This person sent out an email to a bunch of people saying, subscribe to my newsletter. So stay ahead of the game is sort of trying to get at what's in it for them, but that subject line is really more about what's in it for you. Even though the newsletter is going to provide them value, that subject line feels like this is a person trying to get me to do something for them.
Okay.
And that's
That
not
makes
what
sense.
you want. What you want is this is a thing that's going to help you.
Okay.
Or at least something that's going to pique their curiosity to be like, oh, what is that? The second thing that jumped out to me was the first line. So the first line of your email it says, planning unforgettable corporate events is no easy task, but I'm here to help. So, okay, you're kind of trying to relate to them. I get it. You're saying, look, this is hard. I'm here to help. Again, it kind of gets shifted back to you. You're emailing someone you don't know and essentially saying your job's hard. I'll save the day.
Right.
Which for some people might be like, I don't even know you. You don't know that my job is hard. You're going to help, whatever. The intention behind it is good. It's just, there's probably a better way to frame it.
The presentation.
The other thing is, you're telling them in that first line, you're telling them something that they already know. Okay. Let's say they buy into it, right? So they say like, I know it's hard. That's not breaking news. And what you're not doing is you're creating a little bit of curiosity. I'm here to help. Well, they're like, okay, who are you? Which I'll get to in a second with something else, but you're not really creating a ton of curiosity. So I think that's a missed opportunity to drive them in. So when you took the subject line in the first line, they're like, this is a guy who wants me to subscribe to his newsletter. Then his first line's kind of about how he's going to help me. I feel like I'm being sold to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Not the feeling. And that gets people's defenses up, even though what you're really trying to do is help them. The irony is you're not trying to sell them, but and this is what we all do. You fall into sort of professional, corporate, salesy advertiser mode. Like you fall into pitch mode, but even when you're trying not to be in pitch mode.
Got it. It has no personal touch to it. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and it's not representative. Again, especially you have the advantage of being professionally funny and an entertainer. That's not what you would do if you met someone at a networking event. There is no way. I would
probably say, I'm a computer. Yeah, I'm a computer engineer by race, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't say this. You wouldn't say, hi, nice to meet you. Want to stay ahead of the game? Subscribe to my newsletter.
Yeah, I would not. Never. Yeah.
And you wouldn't say, planning corporate events is no easy task, but I'm here to help. So it might be a helpful exercise to think about it that way of like, how would you start a conversation with a corporate booker that you met at a bar somewhere? You're on an airplane sitting next to him. What do you do? Oh, I'm a corporate booker. Oh, really?
Got it.
It's a helpful exercise to sort of do. And then the third bit of feedback I have on your newsletter is your call to action. So you have subscribed today. Again, you're trying to get them to subscribe to your newsletter as the call to action, which is okay. But again, I would say subscribe is kind of a big ask, bigger than it seems.
Okay.
So instead, ask them to see an issue. Would you like me to send you an issue? No pressure. You don't have to give anything. And ideally, I have an issue or I have an article about X, Y, and Z. Would you like to check it out? Hopefully it's about something that they're curious about. And now you start down that road.
Got it.
So just ways to shrink the initial asks. And then some other general notes, just feedback. I think I might have told you some of these before, but there's a bunch of emojis. There's a bunch of bold text. That stuff is good in doses. 30% of the words are bold. that the bold has less
Yeah.
impact than if 10% of the words are bold. So just
Got
think
it.
about that. The call to action is kind of buried at the bottom right now. So data, again, that's a tightrope you're trying to walk. You don't want to hit them up with, oh, here's the thing to do immediately. But also, if it's just buried at the bottom, no one's going to really even see. They should have some
Okay.
sort of what you want them to do. This is a big one. So they have no idea who you are, why they should care about you or trust you. There's no credibility. So there's nothing in your current email. Yes, I have this newsletter. There's nothing that says you're a corporate comedian, you do events. There's no explanation of who you are. Why?
Got
They
it.
don't know anything.
There's no intro. Yeah.
Also, even if it's at the bottom, P.S. in
Right.
case you're wondering who I am, I'm blah, 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 blah. This is why I'm doing
Right.
this, that kind of thing, to give them some context. Without that, it makes it seem even more sort of spammy
Spanning.
and just, you know what I mean?
Got it.
And again, for you, at the end of the day, you're selling yourself. So personality is even more important. The other thing is, this won't work a lot of the time, but sometimes it will. Is there anyone or anything that you have in common?
Okay.
So when you do that research and you see someone, it's, oh, notice that you're friends with so-and-so. I performed with so-and-so the other night. I noticed you're in this Facebook group. So am I. Blah, blah, blah. Anything that can give you any sort of credibility. I noticed that you do events at this venue. I was at that venue 3 months ago. Isn't it ridiculous what they do in the kitchen? Or, like anything that can separate you and be like, oh, this guy
Very
has
close.
ability. We
Right.
have something. It establishes a connection when they didn't even realize they have some sort of connection to you. And then the last thing is, whatever you're going to do, you always want to make everything as easy as possible for them. So even if you are going to ask them to subscribe or whatever, would you like me to add you to the list? Don't even make
Right.
them click through and enter their email address. Want me to send you the next issue?
Right.
Hey, here's the last issue. The next issue is going to have A, B, and C in it. Would you like to check it out? I'll send it to you. So always
Got it.
thinking what's the easiest thing that I could possibly do. And when you get further down the road to, yeah, I'd love to have a meeting with them. I'd love to talk to them or whatever. Let's say you do get to a point where you're asking for, oh, can we have a coffee? Can we have a phone call or whatever? I'd love to have a phone call. Or if you're cool with it, I'd be happy to just send you one question by email. Give them options so that it's not just, oh, I would like to help this guy, but I don't have time to do coffee with him or get on a call with him. Oh, but I'll answer one question.
One question.
Always
Yeah.
be thinking, how can I make it easier for them to say yes to something? And then the last thing I have for you here in this section is, as far as what to send to people, I want to give you 5 ways that you can invite people to engage with you when you send them a cold outreach email. So the first is, you can offer them relevant, valuable content. So you're already doing this with a newsletter, but it could also be things like, you curate a list of podcast episodes that corporate bookers would want to see, right? Hey, here's the 3 best podcast episodes that you might want to check out. It could be a list of books. Oh, these books are amazing. I found this amazing video on YouTube, this interview, something of value that you can offer them that you just give to them in the email. And they're like, oh, that was really valuable. So, that's going to get you more engagement. The second thing you can do to get more people to engage with you is to offer to interview them. So, oh, I have a podcast, I have a newsletter, I have a whatever. And maybe the ask, instead of, do you want to check out my newsletter, is, I'd love to interview you to feature you in my newsletter for blah, blah, blah. Different people are going to respond to different things, and you can experiment with it. The third way to get more people to engage with your outreach, invite them to participate in a survey or a report, and then say you'll give them access to the report if they do. So you could reach out and say, hey, I'm putting together a report on the state of corporate event booking. You're a corporate event booker. I'd love to ask you 10 questions. You can fill out the survey, or if you're open to hopping on a call, that would be even better. If you fill out the survey, it'll take you 2 minutes, and I will give you the report when it's done. So you'll get to see what's going on in the state of, it's only available to people that are at whatever. Okay. I might do that because, again, you're trying to build that curiosity. The other thing you can do, which is the fourth way to get people to engage, is if you do that and they don't go for it, when you do have the report based on the people who did it, you can then reach back out to them and go, hey, I know you didn't have time to do it, but I wanted to share this with you anyway. Here's the report. Thought you might be interested in it, blah, blah, blah. And then the fifth thing you can do, a great way to get more people to engage with you, is your email can be a video. Record a loom, record a short video. And again, maybe that's, especially with what you do, which is so personality driven, take a little more time because you have to do it individually, but you're going to basically say the same thing. You do maybe a 30-second video, and imagine you just sent them a video, a YouTube link, a loom or whatever. And you go, hey, it's Seetha. I just want to tell you what I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. The same thing you would have done in an email, in a video. and they go, you know what? This guy took the time to send me a video. It's going to increase the chances that they
Yep.
reply. And for
Yeah.
you, it's also going to showcase your personality, which in what you do is important and a strength. So that's something you also might want to try. So
Okay.
those 5 things: offer them valuable content, offer to interview them, invite them to participate in a report or survey, offer them the report after it's published, or send them a personalized video. Any of those things will increase the likelihood that people reply to your cold outreach. Any questions about any of that?
Awesome. No, awesome. Yeah. Very nice tips.
Cool.
Thank you.
So before we get to your next question, just one more little thing here for people watching and listening. I've got two, and for you actually, I've got two bonus recommendations. If you're finding this episode helpful, here are two previous episodes I published that you'll love. Way back in
Mhm.
May 2023, I published an episode titled "A PR Pro Reveals How to Get Media Coverage for Yourself" that will help you figure out how to do cold outreach to get attention from people. For example, the 16-minute mark, you'll learn the most common mistake people make when pitching themselves. And at the 19-minute mark, you'll learn exactly what to say when you pitch yourself to be a guest on a podcast. The second episode from my archives you should check out was published in December of 2024 and is titled "How to Get Your Ideal Client's Attention." At the 6-minute mark, I reveal 6 things you can do if your audience isn't growing. And at the 35-minute mark, I give you 3 ways to convert more leads into sales. Links to both of these episodes can be found in the show notes for this episode. All right, Seetha, we're in the home stretch. Let's get to your last question.
Well, this is the hard part, right? So you do cold outreach, you get a cold response, or they
Yeah,
don't,
exactly.
or they don't even respond. It's probably sitting there. They deleted my email. I don't know what's happening. What do we do?
Yeah. So some of this, again, is just mindset and bracing yourself for, I'm going to get a lot of non responses. I think it's really helpful going into this, by the way. I didn't mention this before, but I think it's really helpful to set an outreach goal and judge your progress based on the number of outreaches, not the results that you get, certainly
Okay.
initially. So you
Okay.
might go, all right, so let's say you're doing cold emails to people. You might go, I'm not even going to think about whether or not this is working until I've sent 50 cold emails. And I'm going to
Okay.
judge my
Makes
progress
sense.
of, am I sending 50 cold emails? And if you go over 50, you go over 50 and you can regroup, but you can also feel good that, you know what, I took a real shot at this and I sent 50 emails and now I'll try something else, right? Now I'll try 25 personal videos or whatever it is. Because I think if you get caught up on judging your quote unquote success on are people responding, it gets real deflating real quick.
Oh,
And
wow.
on some level, if you get 5 relationships out of 100, if I told you right now, guaranteed, you're going to have relationships with 5 bookers out of 100 things, you'd be like, I'm good with that. So setting a goal, and if you know that you're going to get 5 out of 100, you're not
Hmm.
deflated when you get 0 out of the first 30.
Yes.
But if you
Yes.
don't know that, and you're not going to know that, there's no way to know that. So I think setting a sort of number, whether it's like a maximum number or whether it's I'm going to do X number of outreaches per day for a month and then see what happens, and tying your, again, your quote unquote success metric is doing the outreach.
Right.
Like I'm doing it. If I get stuff from it, great. If I don't, I'll learn and I'll adapt and I'll try different things, but I can't sort of live and die on every email that I send. You'll drive yourself crazy. And right along with that, I would then add that don't judge a small sample size. I've had people say to me like, oh, like I'm doing outreach, but it's not really working. I'll be like, well, how many emails did you send? And it's like, well, 10. It's like 10 isn't 100. So I think it's important to also like be honest with yourself and go, yeah, I went 0 for 10, but do I think 10 really counts as really having tried this? Or maybe you need more. The other thing, and this goes back to what I said before, it's kind of obvious, but I think it's worth saying, the more you know about them, the easier this becomes and the more likely you are to get responses. These are the sort of parallel paths of I'm going to learn more and more while I'm doing this outreach, and the outreach is going to continue to get better as I learn more, vice versa. As far as, okay, you're doing all that stuff, you're sending stuff out, it's still not working. So things that you can do when people are not responding, you can
Right.
follow up with a different offer. So you don't have to just keep sending the same offer, the same email, the same whatever. If they didn't respond to the first one, you can follow up to the same person with a different one, a different approach. Don't do it the next day. Don't be the person that's, hey, did you see my email? But like, a completely different thing. You might reach out to someone like the people that you emailed with your newsletter offer that haven't responded. You might wait a month or two, and then you might send them a video of you, something totally different. let's try a different approach. Maybe they would want to be interviewed, maybe mixing up the format, mixing up the email, mixing up the offer, all that kind of stuff. The other thing is, don't be afraid to pick up the phone. I know it sounds crazy, but the truth is no one's getting phone calls these days, and you never know. Someone's going to answer the phone, especially in businesses. Somebody's answering the phone there. And for certain people, it might work. Can't hurt. See what happens. The worst that happens is they don't get on the phone. So I think a lot of times, like and I'm guilty of this too, we so default to like email that you forget, like you could just pick up the phone. And along those lines, you could send them a direct message if that's an option on their social platforms. You can comment on their posts. It's amazing. Most people, even busy, successful people, no one's commenting on their posts. They get notifications when somebody does. That's another way to sort of get on people's radar. Another simple one that people don't think about is go where they are. Go in person to events, to venues, to conferences, to whatever they're doing. Someone that works at the convention center is probably there when conventions are going on. So maybe you show up. Hey, where's the person who is so-and-so here? You'd be surprised how often you can actually track people down, especially with what you're doing, how often you can track people down in real life. The other thing you can do is you can incentivize them, which is a fancy way of saying you can pay them. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that you do that when you have boatloads of money, but it can work. And I'll give you one of my favorite stories. I'll give you an example. There was a realtor. She was very confident in her ability when she could get meetings with people who were going to sell their home she would close them. Like a lot of them would be like, okay, yeah, we'll work with you. She was having a hard time getting meetings. So she decided to do this thing as an experiment, and then it worked like incredibly well. But basically she would reach out to people who were going to sell their home or whatever, or were thinking about it, or she thought might be selling their home or whatever it was. And she said to them, okay, if you meet with me about potentially becoming a realtor, I will give you $200 for a half-hour meeting. And in her mind, so people who are like, they're looking for a realtor, they're just not sure like why her, why anyone else. They're like, all right, we'll take a meeting with you for $200. And sure enough, she knows if she signs enough of them, that's a deal. If she pays $200 to get a meeting with someone who she then sells their house, and it worked like wonderfully because she was good in those meetings, whatever, but she also didn't need that many to convert. So it was like, well, every other realtor is, hey, meet with me. She like cut to the chase and was like, I'll give you $200 for your time.
Absolutely.
I'm not suggesting you necessarily do this with the right person in the right situation. I don't know. There might be some people where you go, look, it's no different than, hey, can I take you out to lunch? Some version of that in certain situations can make a lot of sense. And again, it can be framed a million different ways. So you could say, hey, I interview people for my newsletter. And oh, by the way, I know people are busy and I really appreciate your time. And anyone who does an interview with me, I pay $100. And now they might go, I'll give you a $50 Amazon gift card as a thanks for your time for hopping on the call. I don't know the difference that's going to make, but I know this, you're going to get more yeses than you would without it. Whether it's worth it remains to be seen, but it's also the kind of thing that you can experiment, right? You could send the same email saying, hey, I'd love to interview you to 10 people, and then send it to 10 people where you also offer a $50 gift card for their time.
And see
what happens. And if they both go 0 for 10, all right, doesn't matter. If one goes 0 for 10 and the other goes 2 for 10, was it worth $100 for me to meet with these two people? Maybe it wasn't, but that's how you can sort of A/B test and be tweaking and evolving your sort of offers. And again, that's another way to incentivize people. The other thing you could do is you can hire someone to get you meetings and calls. Again, it costs money, it's investment, but so is your time. You could say, look, I'm going to find some sales intern, cold caller, whatever person who's hungry, and I'm going to pay him some money. I'm going to give him some experience. I'm going to say, look, your job is very clear. I want conversations and meeting with these kind of people. Here's 100 of them. Go find more people like it. I'll pay you X amount for every meeting that I get. Have at it. Or I'll pay you X amount an hour or whatever. That's possible. Everything you're going to do is an investment of time, effort, or money. So you might decide, you know what? This is really important. I don't have the time or interest, or maybe I don't want to do this. I'm going to get someone to do it for me, or I'm going to do it as an experiment. I'm going to find someone to reach out to 30 of these people and see what they can make happen. I'm going to find an intern to go to the convention center and stalk the manager there or whatever. So that's another option.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'm going to say here, which is kind of an interesting way to sort of end this whole conversation, It's been all about, cold outreach to get to your ideal client. Is there a way to make the people you're targeting unnecessary? So if you can't
Okay.
get to them, and follow me here because it's going to be a little twisty. So let's take corporate bookers, for example, right? Okay. If you can't get to corporate event bookers or you're having a hard time and ultimately you want corporate gigs, is there a way around them? So what I mean by that is everyone in some degree of any level of anything is in some ways a middleman, no matter how senior, no matter how whatever they are. There's someone on the other side of the transaction. So in your case, the corporate booker on the other side of the transaction is the person at the corporation. Sometimes, and this, it may or may not be true in your case, you don't know until you do it, but sometimes it might be easier to get to, in your case, the corporate client than it is to get to the person booking
Okay,
for the
okay.
corporate client. So you might go, you know what? And it doesn't have to be an either or. You could pursue both paths sort of simultaneously. But I think it's important to remember that however you've defined the sort of ideal person that you're trying to get at,
Right.
there are other ways around them. You're trying to get to them to go through, but you can also try to go around them and go, well, maybe I can try this other approach. Maybe I can go to some conference and talk to the people that are there. And once you start thinking about that, there's infinite sort of paths and ways around. And so I don't think that's where you should start, but I do think it's important to sort of realize, okay, if it's really not working, you're putting all this time and effort in, you're trying all these different things and it's just going nowhere. At some point you go, all right, well, let me try a different direction.
Okay.
And that different
Absolutely.
direction can be all different sites of things, right? That different direction also could always be other comics. Here's a guy who's booking a lot of corporate gigs. I'm going to figure out some way, bring me as your opener. I don't have an opener and I'm not splitting my money with you. Okay, well, how about instead of you splitting your money with me, how about I pay you?
Yeah.
I have to do less time and you're going to give me a little extra money? All right, you want to come be my opener? Like getting creative and being like, I'm going to figure out some way into this thing. And for you, it's an investment because as much as it seems insane to be like, well, I'm not going to get paid, I'm going to pay this guy, but I'm going to get in front of this corporate
Yeah.
client.
Oh,
I'm going
yeah.
to get more, like it would be an investment that probably makes sense. So yeah, so that's, again, there's no magic answer of what to do when people don't respond, but I do think there are a bunch of different things that you can try so that you avoid feeling, oh, I'm just sending emails and no one's responding and I'm stuck. There are things that you can try and you just keep trying until you hopefully hit on something. Any
Okay.
questions about
That
any of
makes sense.
that?
No, makes sense, John.
All right, great. Well, Seetha, let people know where they can find you, connect with you, all that. And if someone's out
Well,
there that wants to book you for their event, their party, their whatever,
find me at
maybe
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
this will get you a gig.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, find me at Seetha The Comic. That's Seetha, The Comic in all platforms. My website is also Seetha The Comic. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Seetha The Comic, TikTok, though I'm not doing much of TikTok these days. But find me and let's connect. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being open and sharing your email. I think this is going to be a very popular episode because I know this is something a lot of people struggle with. So hopefully they found it helpful. My stuff, joshspector.com, my newsletter at fortheinterested.com/subscribe, my clients from content program at joshspector.com/program. Thank you everyone for listening and watching, and I will see you next time.